some number of years ago, here when I live in Berkeley, here in California, a tour came through town of Buddhist relics, and it was through one of the Tibetan Buddhist groups. And what relics are is when one of the teachers, the master dies and the body's cremated, then in the ashes, they'll actually take some of the ashes, but sometimes there'll still be little bits of bone left. Or also what can happen is, I don't know the chemical process, maybe it's something melts a little bit, but you'll get these little, they're like glass-like little tiny spheres, the size of a pea or smaller. And they'll collect those and save those. And then it's just a way of venerating uh, the great teachers, the great masters, and they'll put them in an urn, the relics, and maybe they'll be in a stupa or whatever. So this tour came through town of the Buddhist relics. And so, everybody in town was kind of making the scene, the Buddhist scene. And so, I went, and it was very interesting when I went there, because there were so many people there from so many different traditions, that all these people in all these different kind of robes. So a lot of monastic men and women. Some of them look like various schools of Buddhist schools in the various robes, and some I didn't recognize. So they may have been from, I don't know what kind of traditions, may not have even been Buddhist. And then there was all kinds of people, like New Age kind. I remember somebody was sitting there meditating, wearing a pyramid hat. So they were under this pyramid and these crystals hanging down. So those folks came out, and it was just this wonderful feeling of just, you weren't judging people. It was just a happy feeling that everybody could come, do their thing, their particular style of spirituality or life, and come and be there. And it just drew such an eclectic audience. So it just, I remember being there, and it had such a different feeling. Even some people were bowing. They all had their different styles of bowing. It was just quite a scene. And so what they did was you would come through, they had the relics, there's this table where they were all there, and they were in a bowl, and you'd go around. So when you came through, when it was you sit up in these little bleachers, and when you felt ready, they had this beautiful music, and you'd meditate. And whenever you were ready, you'd come down, and it was wonderful. It was a little ritualistic. So they had some kind of, I guess it's like a blessed water, holy water, and they'd sprinkle it on you and say a mantra or a prayer, and then you'd come through. And I remember coming through there, and I came around, in the first first bowl I came to was Lama Yeshe. Now, Lama Yeshe, he's a contemporary of ours. He died, might have been 30 years ago now or something, but here in California, here in Santa Cruz, he was the main teacher for a Buddhist center in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And so when he died, his stupa is actually there. So he's a real guy, and they had his relics. So I knew that was real relics. I said, okay, it's Lama Yeshe, and you bow, and it was nice. Then I move along, and then there's these other great names from. So in the history is a little murky, but from the time of the Buddha, which was in India, maybe the border of India and Nepal now, but over more than 1,000 years after the Buddha, and these tantric forms of Buddhism evolved that are, some of the names here very important to Tibetan Buddhists. Nagarjuna, very, very important. So there's Nagarjuna right there in the bowl. And I'm just like, okay. And I have to tell you, I don't know, I want to be very clear, but I don't actually believe we don't actually even know if there really was a Nagarjuna, and there could have been more than one. And I think for the Tibetan Buddhists, Nagarjuna is probably second only to the Buddha, is really high up there, revered figure. So, I don't know, but there's the bowl, and there's a little flecks of something in the bowl, Nagarjuna. And I have to tell you, it just hit me, and I didn't even believe it's real relic, and I don't practice in that tradition. And then I went around Milarepa, Atisha, Tilopa. These are some of these tantric names. There they are in the bowls. And I'm just like, then I go, and the next one really hit me, Condonia. Well, Condonia, if you know who Condonia was, in according to the Pali texts, according to according to tradition, the very first Dharma talk that the Buddha gave. So when just a little brief history, he, lived in the palace. His father was probably a chieftain, but we say he was a king in a palace. And when he was age 29, he left home and became a spiritual seeker and wanderer. And he spent 6 years engaged in all these various yogic and ascetic and all kinds of practices that were kind of going on in the day. And then when he realized that they weren't leading to what he wanted, he almost starved himself, right? But during that 6 years, he'd been practicing with this other group of 5 ascetics. They're known as the group of 5, or the 5 ascetics. And so he left them and went off and sort of completed his own work, had his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. And then after his enlightenment, the story says he was wondering, well, who's going to get this? It's so subtle, nobody's going to get it. And he realized, the 5 ascetics, they're close. They could get it. And so he travels and wanders back and comes to his old buddies, the 5 ascetics. And the story is that when they saw him, they said, don't pay attention to Siddhartha Gautama over there. He's that lazy guy who fell off the path. And what he did, he took 1 meal a day. I guess they considered that indulgence, right? So by our tradition, he was still quite ascetic, but according to them, they said, but they couldn't contain themselves because he was their old buddy. They ran up, they welcomed him, and they said, hello, friend. And then the Buddha said, don't call me friend. It's not right to call the Tathagata. That's how the Buddha referred to himself, means thus gone. So it's kind of enigmatic. What does Tathagata mean? But it's translated as thus gone. And that's how he referred to himself. Don't call the Tathagata friend. And they're kind of saying, what? It's sort of like saying, dude, this is us. Come on. What do you mean you can't? And so he said, have you ever heard me speak like this before? And they say no. And he said, well, sit down, let me teach you, because I'm now, when he claimed his enlightenment. And then the very first Dharma talk recorded, at least according to the tradition, is called Setting in Motion the Wheel of the Dharma. Rolling or setting in motion the wheel of the Dharma. And that's where the Buddha gives the talk on the middle way, which is a middle path between the extremes of overindulgence and sense pleasures on one hand, and self-mortification and extreme asceticism on the other. There was kind of a middle way. The middle way and the Four Noble Truths. That's the talk he gave. And then at the end of the talk, it's said that Condonia got it. And I think he became what they call a stream enterer then. I don't know if he was fully enlightened then. No, he was, anyway, one or the other. But according to the tradition, Condonia is the first person after the Buddha to get it, just hearing the talk from the Buddha. So Condonia is a big, big deal. And it's even has the Buddha exclaiming, Condonia, he's got it. And with exclamation marks, right? So there's Condonia right there in the bowl. And it hit me. And I'm crying, and it's Condonia, and it's like, and I still don't believe that it's actually his relic. Again, I don't know. But in any way that had any meaning at all, that's Condonia. Didn't matter if it was really a bit of his bone or not. It's so alive to me. And then I went on. Sariputta and Mahamoggallana. Well, they're the Buddha's two chief disciples, and they show up a lot in the old suttas. They're just like just the top two guys behind the Buddha. And then there's Shakyamuni Buddha. There he is, right there in the bowl, right? A few little flecks of what's it, bone or something like that. So I guess the point of this is that I was just so inspired by how alive I kind of felt, as if like I was there with them or something like that. The life. And what struck me about it is it just brought into my mind, because we think it's kind of can be abstract. You know, we've deified the Buddha. We practically have him floating through the air and all this stuff. And, you know, he was a person, and he didn't claim to be anything other than a person. He's someone who came to some kind of profound enlightenment, awakening, liberation, whatever that was. But when the Buddha taught, it was just as real as this moment is now. That's what it was then. A real person there, and with these 5 ascetics just sitting right there. And, you know, there are all these stories from back at the time of the Buddha, just like Kondonya, where someone would hear a talk from the Buddha or something and have some tremendous awakening would happen from that. And people, well, you'll often hear people say, well, you know, what was going on there? Because that doesn't seem to be happening today. Are people, you know, where are all the people hearing Dharma talks and getting all this enlightenment today? And I think one of the things to think about is that we don't really know what was going on. But first of all, it's said in the tradition that the Buddha had these psychic powers. We don't know. But, you know, at the very least, he must have been pretty insightful and well attuned to his audience. Let's just say that. So it's said he really knew just what was needed for people to offer. But also what I really think of is, if you thought the real Buddha was with you now speaking, I have a feeling for all of us, the level of our listening and attunement or receptiveness would be on a whole different level. And so it may have been the power of the Buddha and his own teaching, but I like to think that, I don't know, but I believe that it's what a lot of it is what people brought to it. And it was their receptiveness, right, on ways maybe it took something like the presence of a Buddha to allow that level to crack open in them. And so I like thinking of it like that, because what it's really telling me, if that's true, is that, you know, in a way, it's kind of a cliche. People say, well, you know, the Buddha's here now teaching. And it's a way of speaking. But what I think it's trying to point to is that the teachings are, you know, I've said on this retreat, like using everything as our teacher. And I want to explore that here, because it's an attitude we can start to bring that can change our relationship with our experience. And it's easy to forget this. But when you can remember, it's an interesting thing to shift. I told a story I think in the Dharma talk, I don't remember, yesterday, a few days ago, when I had come off a retreat and talking about how I had been doing this loving kindness practice. And it's like I was just deep in and, you know, radiating love for all beings. And then, you know, when I was driving home, I actually ran into an actual being, and my mind, something unkind came from that, right? I'd been chanting the Metta Sutta, may all beings everywhere. And then my mind, as soon as I saw what this, it kind of cut me off in traffic. My mind just went, you know, all beings, jerk, right? And then I came back and picked up the chant without missing a beat. But a few seconds later, I woke up from the trance, and I just said, oh, wait, what happened? And I realized that the guy did me a favor. That's kind of the attitude, because he revealed, I could take it, instead of just letting it pass, I got to see, oh, wait a minute, here's a place where the mind can go, even coming out of just fresh out of retreat, first person I encounter. And it kind of shined the light of awareness in a way. And so it was like, that's an example of that moment being my teacher. And so, and it's an interesting thing, because these teachings have been, like, we're alive now, but just thinking back, right, for 2,500 years, roughly, depending on when you date, there's, we don't really know the exact dates of the Buddha, but 2,500 years is pretty good number, nice round number. And these teachings have been transmitted as an oral tradition, and then as a written tradition for 2.5 millennia, and kept alive. And what I love about that is we don't have to get into disagreements about what was authentic and what was at the time of the Buddha. We have a living tradition now that we can actually try on for ourselves and put it into practice. And that's what we are doing here, right? We're actually doing this. If you did nothing but just to sit down, to be present with yourself, right? When we tell people to meditate, we give instructions, and there's all different kind of instructions, but really it's all some version of make your body comfortable, sit quietly, and just be present with whatever happens. You don't even have to make anything happen. Just be with whatever is. And we see right away how hard that can be sometimes. Just that, letting ourselves be. And talk about, something that can really help crack one's heart open with self compassion is just that, right? When you really think about that, right? How hard it can be just to let ourselves be. Right there is a tremendous teaching for us, right? Instead of getting in a struggle, it's showing us how hard it can be to find a way of being that's, how would I say it, but in harmony with, or not in contention with anything, right? It's not so easy. So every time the difficulties come up, there's your teacher right there, if you can hold it with that. And instead of getting lost and caught in the struggle, there is, we can see it as the teacher showing us, and then we stop judging ourselves so much, because you can start to hold things as a learning opportunity, as opposed to everything that's, oh, I'm so terrible, bad, look at this. It's like, no, I like to call things learning edges. I just like that phrase, because it takes the judgmentalness out of it. And, but it shows me that we can have an edge. And so we can hold it kind of in a neutral way. We don't have to like beat ourselves up. You don't have to throw a party either when your difficulties come up, but we can just meet what life gives us. And so that's, of course, we've been saying this all along, this is why we practice, but because we need to train our minds, because it's easier said than done, right? So but what we want to realize is that as we've idealized these historic figures, I want to think back these great masters. I feel like the message of the great masters is alive today. Now, some people we would call great masters maybe are alive, but I'm thinking about some of these people who are now in the bowls, right? And we can hold ourselves with kindness, because you just have to know, until you're in the bowl yourself with a little label on your name and people are crying every time they see it, you're not doing anything wrong, right? It's really important to think about this. By definition, unless you're a fully liberated being, it means there's places of greed, hatred, and delusion in your mind, or the potential seeds of it that are waiting for the right cause and condition for them to sprout. That's all it is. So every time your humanity is shown to you, it's simply like, well, it's just simply Buddha training, because there's some more work to be done until you're a Buddha yourself, right? That's all it is. And, even the Buddha himself in the text, now the text is very formalized, um, uh, but he got in arguments with his relatives. And he sometimes, spoke to people in a way that sounded kind of rough to me, even through the lens of, he was, uh, he could rip into people some there. Even now, you might say, well, he knew what was needed and he just said what was needed. Well, maybe. I like to think that, it's okay for me if he got irritated, actually. It actually makes it not so remote. This idea of awakening enlightenment can feel like, oh, that's somebody up on the mountaintop in the cave. That's not me. Oh, my practice is so terrible. Well, reflecting that these great masters, and when you read some of the stories, whether they're real or not, but that they're preserved in the traditions, these people struggled. Some of them were pretty rough people, had hard lives. Maybe they didn't even have super gentle personalities after they were enlightened. Some of them were pretty tough men and women. And so that to me makes it more, it's not remote, because I have my struggles and I can sometimes not be perfect, right? Right. And, if I sat here and told you, I never got irritated about anything, would you believe that? No, that'd be deeply suspicious, right? We're human beings. And so it can bring it more alive. And what we realize is, and this is a part that I hope you can, if you want to take this on, now this is big, the teachings and the practices have been transmitted as in an unbroken chain from the Buddha to the present. And each generation, each person has been a link in the chain. Well, guess what? You're a link in the chain too. It's not someone else. It's us. We are the living link now. So you don't get out of it that easy. Like, oh, well, that's the Dharma teacher up there, but it's not me. No, it's you. This is kind of like, maybe it's like the mafia or something. Once you're in, you're just in for life. That's it, right? And could you stop anyway? Could you decide to say, I just want to be less self-aware, or you don't have to go on retreats and do all this meditation, I'm not saying how it manifests, but in your heart, in the depths of your own being, are you going to stop aiming for your highest good and for the benefit of yourself and others? It just would go against who you are. We are all the living chain. This is, literally, this is true. And so we are the students of the previous generation. We are the elders of the next generation. It's us. It isn't anybody else. It really is you. And so we can embody that, step into that. And again, obviously you don't want to walk around like, hey, I'm the elder. Yeah, no. But as we live more authentically from the place of kind of, how would I say it? We're more consciously attuned to the deeper truths within ourselves. It shows. You don't have to do anything. It just becomes a part of the expression of your being. And we all know what it can be like to be around someone who seems to embody something. I don't know if you've run into many beings like that, but I've run into a few. And there was something about their presence. I can think of three people in particular, and something just hit me. And I just didn't know what it was, but I thought, I don't know what this person's got, but what they have, that's what I want. You could just something palpable there. And I may not have even wanted to have their personality. And the two I'm thinking of in particular, I did not want to do their practices. I wasn't drawn to their practice at all. but what had become alive in them was something real. So you can feel that, right? So this idea, I guess, one way to think of it is everything's your teacher, life is your teacher, every experience can be your teacher. You could think of it, like I said earlier, it's a little trite, but the Buddha is here teaching now. If we could open to it, you have to find what way you relate to it. So what is it what can support us then to keep that idea of using life as our teacher more alive? So we're really staying attuned. I just personally, I'm a little bit of a romantic at heart, I guess, but I just like to keep the feeling of um, the living masters are here, aliveness of it in teaching. I just like the feeling of it. And, I kind of imagine like maybe good old Condonia was really kind of, well, ostensibly he was an arhat, so he's not around anymore to look down on me from the clouds. But it's kind of like it just brought a presence back. So you can see what brings it alive. Well, some of it are things that we've already uh, been speaking of, and I'm just going to mention this one again. I won't dwell on it because I've already touched on this, but it's not judging ourselves by how well or poorly, how good or bad we think we're doing it. Because these forces in us that pull us away, that cause us to lose connection with, like, whom among us wouldn't want to live more deeply, more authentically, more of the time in really profound alignment with our highest aspirations? We all do. What are the things that pull us away? Well, we have to be respectful of those forces. And it's not that we're doing anything wrong. Those are these kind of impersonal forces that are in us. So, and you don't want to be judging yourself based on it. You want to just open up to the humanity of what we all have to deal with. For example, it happens so much, even on this retreat, at least a few people have mentioned to me about how weak or poor, I don't remember the exact wording, bad their meditation practice is. And one person really had quite a bit of self-judgment about it. I'll tell you something about that. I used to do a lot of prison Dharma work, a lot. Back in the 1970s, early 70s, I lived in a yoga ashram. Ram Dass was part of this thing. It's called the Prison Ashram Project, and I was connected with that. I used to go into San Quentin prison way back then. And I haven't done this work for more than 20 years, but in more recent times before I stopped, I was actually used to be the Buddhist chaplain at two state. It wasn't a paid position, but I was the Buddhist chaplain, and I would go in and run these Dharma groups down in Soledad. There are two separate prisons down there, and some of them are pretty rough places. And one of the two prisons, there's the men's correctional training facility. It's what they call a level 2 prison, and those are kind of the sort of the mainstream prison there. But then there's the level 4 prison called Salinas Valley State Prison, and that's like was known as one of the roughest. It's kind of like Pelican Bay. It was like really one of the toughest prisons for some of what they would consider to be the worst, hardest cases were in there. We had our Dharma group in there, and I went in there for a long time. And sometimes what would happen is there would be some kind of violent incident, and they would they'd lock everybody, go on lockdown either for a few days, or it could be even go up to several months, meaning you didn't come out of your cell except they fed you in your cell, everything, but one at a time. During the period of the lockdown, you'd go up individually one at a time to take you out to get a shower twice a week. That was it. When it would be really, there was a riot or something happened like that. I don't know riots, but there'd be like a gangs fighting or something. And so I got to, I would still go in during that time, and I'd go around to the cells of the people in our group, and I could visit them. How you doing? And it was a range of how people were doing. And then finally, when they opened up the, could run, everything was back to normal. We could run our group again. And I was checking in and said, well, how have you guys been doing? And some people did okay. Some were, as you can imagine, really hard. So, well, how's your meditation practice going? I remember this one guy during the lockdown, he just said, I don't know, I just couldn't find time to meditate. And he's sitting in a cell 24/7 for 2 months. So I loved that story because uh, uh, it just shows kind of the human nature, the human condition. And so if you're having trouble meditating in daily life, or say you're at home, because it's one thing to go on retreat when you're at a retreat center, when you step out of your normal routine. But let's just say we're all wherever you're living right now, and let's just say you've really set up the conditions where it's quiet. I don't know, maybe you live by yourself. You can the time's yours. Say there are some people here like that, and you're still getting pulled away. Um, well, it's your teacher in a number of ways, and we can hold it that way. First of all, you're in good company and you're not doing anything wrong. This is what it is like. And this is how it can be teaching us. You say, this is what it's like to be on a Zoom retreat, have my life set up like this. I really don't have to be pulled away, and it still can't make myself get to the sits because I'm checking, CNN or something, whatever you do, right? And it pulls us. So we start to see things more accurately, and we don't start judging ourselves by how we think we're supposed to be. And I really think one of the things that I want to point out that's an important teaching with the Buddha, there's a word in Pali called manas, which is translated as conceit. And so, and the Buddha's quoted as saying, if you think you're better than someone, that's conceit. If you think you're less than someone, that's conceit. And if you think you're equal to someone, that's conceit. That's kind of odd, isn't it? Why is that conceit? Well, it's a different take. It's the conceit of being consumed with yourself. And the Buddha is pointing to, we can maybe drop that. It's kind of like comparing mind, if you will. But drop all this, even if it's not comparing, it's just this whole feeling of, how am I doing? Am I okay? What am I going to do? How am I strategizing? Am I okay? How am I going to be okay? How am I going to stay okay? And just all of this. And when all of that, it's hard sometimes for it to drop away. But when we notice that pattern of conceit going, right, that's teaching us too the patterns of what happens in our mind. And it's a real way that our minds generate suffering, and can drop that. That's more into letting be more. So that's kind of the way of it. And you've probably all heard this story, but I'll just share it again in case some of you haven't, of Milarepa, who was one of those people in the bowl, and he was one of the Tantric Tibetan, well, he's Indian Tantric Buddhism, but for the Buddhists. And there's all these songs of Milarepa, right? Spiritual kind of poems. And there's a story that Milarepa was practicing in the cave, and all these demons all of a sudden one day, he was all deep in meditation, all these demons appeared. So Milarepa, he sings a song to them, welcoming them, and the little ones disappear, but the other ones are still there. And then he says, okay, and he brings food and offerings, and then the medium ones disappeared, but the biggest, fiercest demon was there. And then, according to Milarepa's poem, his story, he put his head in the mouth of the demon, and then it disappeared. And so this is really pointing to, not to be taken literally, but this idea of opening and being all the parts of ourselves is the idea. It's kind of this welcoming or opening to when they reveal themselves. And I think one way to do that is the idea, sometimes it's not necessarily thinking of it as the teacher, but it's more just a sense of letting be, letting ourselves be. And when we, by the way, when we can let ourselves be, that liberation of the masters, it's not remote. It's something alive right here and now. We may not have fully uprooted any potential for us to fall into greed, hatred, and delusion, but we can have these moments, and this is what it is, right? Moment by moment, when the difficulties come, how do we relate with them? And if we can bring a sense of letting be and letting go. And I like the way that Ajahn Sumedho would talk about it. I think I used this language the other day. He would just say, when your mind is in a peaceful, quiet place, it's like this. When ill will comes up, ill will is like this. Confusion is like this. Anger is like this. And I like that way of framing it. You can try it on sometime and see if you like it, because it both has it brings the acknowledgement of what's happening there. So you're acknowledging it, but also it has kind of a softness to it that's gives space or allowing it to be there. And I think that can, so somehow I just like that way of framing it. And so all of our conditioned patterns, you may have noticed this, they're going to keep coming around. I've mentioned the other day, this idea, which I really think is important, is from time to time, reflect back and see if there's places in you. Some of you have reported back in the interviews about this, where you, something's gotten better. The way you used to suffer in a certain area of your life is not so much. And so that's a place where the real liberation is manifests itself right here and now. It's real fruit. It's not just as a concept or an idea way off into the future. So we can include that, but we also have to know that we all know this, that these patterns just keep rolling around, rolling through. And so that's another way that we can have a lot of compassion for ourselves, knowing that after all these years, it's one thing to, God, I've been doing this practice for 10 years. When is my psychology going to let go? My old woundedness and these, and my whatever kind of mind I have, when's it going to let go? And we can despair. One thing that helped me is, I remember being on I think it was like on I can't remember, 1 month, 6-week retreat. And I was about a month in, and it was the same kind of format as here. Every morning there'd be the 8 o'clock, 8:15 sit, and there'd be the Q&A at the end of that. And I asked the question, and I was really having a hard time. And I said, I was feeling a lot of discouragement. And I said to the teacher, I said, I've been here, whatever, a month, full-time meditating, developing a strength of mindfulness. And I said, I can't even get up from my meditation seat and walk 100 feet to the dining hall in perfect mindfulness. There's going to be some judgment about someone or some woman or some thing I like or don't like or whatever. And I said, how am I going to do this when I get back out into daily life? And she said, you're right. It is too much. You can't. But she said, what I would suggest is that you're holding it with the wrong view. Your job is not to make it from here to the dining hall in perfect mindfulness. Your job is to, when you stand up, to know you're standing up. And then when you start to step, to be aware, you're mindful, you're moving through space. And when your mind, a thought of ill will comes, or this person or that person or whatever it is, it's just to know that that's what arose in your mind. You don't have to go past the present moment, right? Because if you look at the whole thing, it's just like some people show up on retreats and they'll think, oh my God, it's a whole week or it's a 10-day. I can't do it. I'm not going to make it. It's like, if it's this bad the first morning of the first day, I can't make it. But it is too much. But can you make like 2 breaths? And whatever answer you have, we have to respect. Can you take another breath? And so this is the idea, is we want to wake up into this unfolding of this present moment. And as I said the other day, it actually can be very, very relaxed, because when you're gone and you completely forget, we've lost our mindfulness. I call it just being on automatic pilot. It's really not a problem, because you don't even know, right? And when you're back and realize you've been gone, great, you're back. You don't have to struggle. And so now you're awake, present, and can just meet your present moment, and then as skillfully as you can. And I'll share with you from my own practice, I still have my daily formal meditation practice. I don't know what would happen if I stopped doing that. I haven't done the experiment about that. I don't know. So that I keep that up. But really the rest of my own practice, this may not be for you, but I'll share it with you. For me, it's gotten very simple. And it's just this. During the times when my heart and mind are at peace, and I'm just living in a quiet, non-reactive way, I don't do anything. I just live. And when the teacher shows up and my heart closes off in ill will, I do the best I can. I open the heart. When I fall into reactivity, contraction, negativity, something, I let go. And so it's just a practice of being, or opening the heart, let go, opening the heart, let go. And we all, if any of you have done any amount of practice, know that these are just mind states, and we can shift them. Sometimes if something's beyond our learning edge, it might be too much for us. And that's different. Then we have to be respectful of that. But for so many things, it's not fake. We actually can shift the mind from negativity to if you really have an intention, for example, to live with an open heart, you can shift so that and just open the heart right there. You just drop it and do it. You have to let go of being right. Sometimes it's important to be right. Don't get me wrong. We have inner relations, and we have to take care of ourselves. I'm not talking about that. But, in the normal flow of things, if you're not being just, if someone's not just physically, but, verbally attacking you, well, look, you got to do what you need to do. I'm not saying you should not take care of yourself, whatever that looks like. But we can just drop things, let go of our opinions, let go of our views, let go of being right, and just let go. And that's one of the formulations, if you wanted to sort of summarize all of Dharma practice from a Theravada perspective, is just let go, let go, let go. And it's a real simple kind of idea. And the difficulty comes because sometimes our conditioning doesn't allow us to let go so easily. And so that's all right. Once I was, I'd actually been away teaching a retreat. And I flew home landed in the San Francisco airport, and I was driving, if you know the San Francisco Bay Area, then I was driving from San Francisco across the bay through San Francisco and over into Oakland here where I live. And I happened to land at a time when it was during rush hour. And it happened that they don't use it anymore, but the old football stadium, Candlestick Park, was letting out a football game, I think. And either one of those, rush hour traffic or football game, is a nightmare. Rush hour traffic. This was both. And I'd been away. My son was about 2 years old, and he was fine. I was going to be home soon, but I was missing him. It wasn't his problem, but I was missing him. And I hadn't eaten that much, so I was a little hungry and kind of in a grouchy mood. That's my excuse. And I'm sitting there in traffic, and I was just mad at all of these other people clogging up the dang roads, So I can't get home. It never occurred to me that, of course, I'm the traffic for them. I didn't think of it quite like that. And the thing was, I'm just sitting in the car. I could turn on the radio, I could listen to music, I could sit quietly. It wasn't unpleasant except what's going on in my mind. The problem was only that I thought I was supposed to be somewhere else instead of there. That was it. And I was burning in, I just really got a lot. So much for the benefits of this great retreat I'd been teaching. And to make it worse, I was totally mindful and aware of all of what I just said to you that's going on. But my mind just was in a place it wasn't so easy to let go. It wasn't letting go. And to make it worse, there was no one to blame for my suffering but myself. And so I'm sitting in the car with this, and eventually, I learned, but fortunately I remembered, oh, wait a minute. Yes, life's my teacher. Right. Okay. Wait a minute. Life's my teacher. This is my teacher. But that reflection didn't evaporate the burning of anger. What it was teaching me is that this is what it feels like to sit burning in anger. When you know what you're doing and you still can't let it go, it feels like it's like this. And so I got to sit, and that's the teaching of the suffering right there. And so I'm in the Four Noble Truths right then. This is suffering. This is its cause. And then when the mind was able to let go, I didn't change my circumstances. It probably took me another hour to get home, but the letting go was in my mind. This is the end, and this was the way leading to the end of suffering. So the next time you're suffering, it's not an intellectual exercise. You're in the Four Noble Truths right then. Wow, I'm in the Four Noble Truths. It's here right now. It's alive. It doesn't always feel like that, but it's kind of like that. And then we can take it on as the learning. And again, sometimes when it's our task to suffer, that's what maybe is needed to feel it. And Ajahn Chah has this image. He said it's like if someone's holding a hot coal in their hand. You put a hot coal, you don't have to tell them to drop it. The hand just reacts and drops. He goes, but so many times we're holding the hot coal of our suffering, and we're not even seeing that we can just drop it. Or worse, I don't know if it's worse, but it feels worse. We see it, and we haven't figured the key. We don't have the key yet, the way. How do I drop this? And so sometimes we need to, you've heard me say over and over that I'm very much in favor of erring on the side of ease and relaxation and being kind to ourselves. And I think the other day I said something like, don't worry, you'll get plenty of suffering to work with. You don't have to go look for it. But when it finds us, hopefully we've created enough safety and space so that we are able to allow us to be more present with our suffering, right? And I think also when the smaller sufferings come, if we can hold it with wisdom, a friend of mine once said, it's like lifting the little weights so that when the time in life to lift the big weights come, we haven't started from scratch. We have some experience. And that's another way to hold when the smaller difficulties inevitably find us. If it's within the range with which we can work, even though we don't like it, if we can take it on as a teacher and an opportunity to come to know how we work with it, it can build the muscle, if you will, so that we're more able to meet the big suffering. So just a couple of more things here that I want to offer just to come to an end. I want to say that, of course, we all have, if you look back to the teachings of the great masters, one of the, if you really, when you pay close attention, you can see that they were filled, they didn't seem to have any special qualities. And you could say, oh no, their karma had built and whatever, fine. But for all normal appearances, I mean, some of these guys were running prostitution rings and all kinds of stuff. They didn't really seem to have special qualities. There's a story, one guy, Gulimala, he's a serial killer. You may have heard the story about that. He was a serial killer, and the Buddha converted him to being an arhat. I like that story because, okay, I'm not that, no matter how bad I think I am, I'm not that bad. So my point is, we can judge ourselves, because this is getting back to having the proper perspective on ourselves. We all have plenty of areas in our lives where we have real, honest limitations in what might be possible for us, right? You don't have to look far. You're not going to, my brother is a college track coach. And at my age, he's saying, come on, Richard, I used to run track when I was in high school. And it's like, I'm 68 now. It's like, I don't think so. And he goes, no, you can do it. You can, come on, we'll run together. And I'm going to get you into you're going to run the half mile and the 800 meters in international competition for age 70 and older. Come on. And I'm saying, so I said, okay, come on, I'll go out and run with you and get exercise. And, I did get stronger, but compared to when I was young, when I was young, I was strong. I saw a photo of myself recently back when I was young. I used to be a very active rock climber for many years. I was a pretty decent climber in my day. And there I was with my climbing friends. And it's funny, I look at them, they're just all dead now. It's like, oh my God, but that was us, and I'm the last one alive of these guys. And we were young and strong and thin. And it's like, man, I had muscles, and it was really, and I could just run all day. And my legs used to carry me wherever I want to go. And now it feels like I have to carry my legs around, and they just felt thick like logs. And it's just, I'm not gonna, it was really clear that, there's a real limitation in what I could do as a runner. It's also a nice teaching when I looked at that picture of myself when I was a young climber, and that's a teaching on, like, you could look at it and go, oh my God, where did my youth go? I forgot about those days. God, that was my life then. Where did my youth go? What happened? What went wrong? Right? But then there's another opportunity. It's teaching me. It's saying, well, nothing went wrong. This is just what happens to bodies. They go from looking like that to, they go to look like this, right? That's what happens. So that it's a teaching because clinging to and then we learn clinging to the body is not a reliable way to attain happiness, right? So it's like that. So we have real limitations. I'm not going to run a mile in 4 minutes. No matter how much I practice, I'm just not getting in the MBA, right? I mean, it's being a little silly, but we have real limitations, right? But in the areas of Dharma and the Dharma qualities, no matter how deeply habituated and strongly identified we are with everything that's just undercutting us and that's wrong with us and however we judge it, there literally are no limitations to what's possible in the deepening and flowering of these Dharma qualities that we're all aiming to cultivate. No, in liberating your hearts and mind, there's no limitations. And it's just an amazing thing that it seems to be the way the universe works. But I mean that this is not meant to be, just inspire you, feel good, happy talk. Take a look for yourself. They're just conditioned patterns. Serial killers, people running sex trafficking rings, attained profound liberation at the time of the Buddha. We can do it. And so it only depends on the simple, the problem is it's confoundingly simple, but it's just you don't have to get concentrated. Doesn't matter if you're concentrated or not. You don't have to develop insights. We want to do practices to strengthen those to help us, but it all comes back down to what's just happening in the present moment, whatever it is, and our ability to actually just be in our experience, bring some mindfulness there, and then to let suffering teach us when it's there, and we just learn in the spirit of learning to let go, when we're in a good, peaceful place of mind to appreciate that. And we'll find, going back to the image I used, a previous talk, it may have been yesterday, about the image of the water imagery, and being in the stream of the Dharma, getting the stream like in the Mississippi River and how it takes us. It really is like that, right? I think I said in the talk that that it's not possible. It's a double negative. It's not possible to not come out at the Gulf of Mexico if you're out there in the middle of the Mississippi River. That's a lot of force just taking you. It's just going to happen. It just can't be stopped. And the fact that even if we judge it, our judgments are inaccurate, but even if we're judging that we're feeble and just aren't doing it very well, just by bringing the best you have, it is putting energy in that direction. And the only thing possible is for us to keep moving in the direction of liberation. And so we can let go of the judging and just bring some patience, take the long-term view, and just show up. We don't have to make it all the way to the dining hall in perfect mindfulness, right? We just have to let ourselves be, including the times when we lose our mindfulness. And we really will see that it's enough. And so I hope that will help to, if you need some gladdening of your mind, but do the experiment. It's not just meant to be a feel-good Dharma talk. I really invite you to check out for yourself and see the truth of that. That it really comes down to something quite simple. It doesn't have, and all the complexity, then if we want to add in things to help us, that's fine. And then we can kind of relax into this. I really feel that things often happen on levels that's not readily knowable to us. And we have to have some trust in life. And, you could have ended up any kind of person with any kind of goals in life. And, it's an amazing thing to have ended up as a Dharma practitioner and wanting to deepen in love and wisdom. And so how we got here, I don't know, but we're here. And that's a lot of power to support us and carry us. So let's sit quietly. Just do a few breaths and then I'll ring a bell to end.